The Forest Grave. The forest was alive in a way the four teenagers could not have imagined. Tall pines loomed like silent sentinels, their needles whispering in the wind. Shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy unevenly, casting flickering patterns on the forest floor. Ethan led the group along the narrow trail, boots crunching over fallen leaves. Behind him, Lucas, the group's prankster, carried the tent poles, cracking jokes that no one found funny. Mia followed closely, her dark hair tied back, eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. Ava brought up the rear, humming softly to herself, as if to ward off the oppressive silence. It was supposed to be an ordinary adventure, 2 days away from school, phones, and everything else that defined their everyday lives. Just 4 friends, nature, and the thrill of being on their own. By late afternoon, they stumbled upon a small clearing beside a stream, a hidden gem surrounded by moss-covered rocks and towering trees, the perfect place for a campsite. Lucas immediately began setting up the tent, muttering under his breath about stiff poles and tangled ropes. Ethan and Ava gathered firewood, chatting casually, though each word carried an undercurrent of unease they didn't quite acknowledge. Mia excused herself and wandered a little farther into the trees, looking for privacy. She needed to dig a latrine, and the thick undergrowth promised the seclusion she desired. The forest floor was harder than she expected, roots twisting beneath the soil like sleeping snakes. She braced herself and began digging, shovel scraping against roots and packed earth. Her routine thoughts about school, her friends, the freedom of the forest were suddenly interrupted when the shovel struck something solid. A hollow, unnerving clink echoed through the clearing. Heart hammering, she knelt and brushed away the soil. Her stomach turned. A human skull lay before her, half buried, dirt encrusted. Empty eye sockets stared up at her, a silent accusation etched into the worn bone. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. Mia's first instinct was panic. She wanted to scream, to run, to throw it back into the hole she had dug. But then reason, or perhaps fear of being judged by her friends, took hold. Carefully, she wrapped the skull in a cloth from her backpack and tucked it inside. "Nothing to worry about," she whispered to herself. "It's just a skull. Old, maybe from an old grave." She buried her fear beneath forced smiles as she returned to the clearing. By the time night fell, a subtle unease had settled over the group. Shadows flickered in the firelight, dancing in unnatural ways. Lucas's jokes, once loud and brash, sounded hollow. Ava laughed, but it was an effort, her eyes darting toward the trees. Ethan sensed something off, but couldn't put it into words, chalking it up to the forest's eeriness. The first night passed slowly. Every snapping twig, every rustle of leaves made hearts jump. They told themselves it was animals, the wind, their imagination, but there was no escaping the sensation of being watched. As darkness deepened, the subtle horrors began. Whispers floated through the trees, soft at first, unintelligible. They seemed to weave around the campers, curling through the branches and leaving goosebumps on exposed skin. The temperature dropped inexplicably, chills crawling along their spines. Mia's guilt gnawed at her. The skull in her pack felt heavier with each passing hour, as if it pulsed with a life of its own. She couldn't tell the others. Lucas was too reckless, Ava too fragile, Ethan too rational. She was alone with it, and it seemed to sense that. By the second night, the terror escalated. The first true manifestation appeared at dawn, a figure at the edge of the clearing. Limbs moved in jerky, unnatural motions. There was no head, yet the posture spoke of anger, of intent. It glided closer with an eerie grace, and the ground beneath it seemed to recoil. The forest itself joined the hunt, every sound amplified, distant screams that might have been real or imagined, the snapping of branches where no one stood, shadows flitting across the corner of their vision. Lucas, oblivious to the mounting danger, ventured toward the creek to gather water, and did not return. His disappearance marked the first of many irreversible events. By midday, the remaining 3, the rational Ethan, the fearful but resolute Mia, and the anxious Ava, felt the forest tighten around them. Panic set in. Each sound, each movement, each whisper could signal the next attack. Mia's guilt and fear intensified. The skull she had found was not just an artifact, it was a tether, a conduit to something that demanded restitution. Nightfall brought the full horror. The headless figure returned, closer now, its presence overwhelming. Lucas's bloodless body was found later, eyes wide in silent terror. Ava's terror became contagious. Her screams shattered the fragile courage of the remaining friends. She ran blindly into the trees and never returned. Mia and Ethan faced the entity, the forest pressing in around them. Shivering, Ethan spoke aloud. "Who are you? What do you want from us?" The air thickened. Every leaf, every branch seemed to hold its breath. Then, in a hollow, echoing voice, "My head is with you." The truth hit with paralyzing clarity. The skull in Mia's pack had anchored the spirit to their reality. It demanded acknowledgement, a restoration of respect and order. Desperation forced them into action. They dug a proper grave in the clearing where Mia had first discovered the skull, placing it within and arranging stones carefully to mark the spot. The act was ritualistic, solemn, and terrifyingly intimate. The forest did not release them immediately. Shadows lingered, whispers persisted. The events of the 2 nights had changed them irrevocably. Even with the skull returned, Ethan and Mia felt the oppressive presence of something older, something that had witnessed countless trespasses before them. By sunrise, silence fell. The forest had reclaimed the clearing, but the weight of horror remained. The teenagers emerged physically alive, but mentally altered. The memories of friends lost, of the headless figure, and of the forest's unyielding gaze would haunt them forever. The skull rested finally in the grave, its demands met. Yet in the rustle of the leaves, in the cold drafts that slithered down the trunks, a faint warning remained. Disturb the grave again, and the forest would not forget. Even now, if one listened carefully, the faint echo of a headless scream could be heard in the wind, a reminder of the consequences of curiosity, greed, and fear.